What's up, everybody? Schuyler Diehm here, lifestyle fat loss coach, and in this video we are basically going over my full blood work results with Garrett Query. If you need a little background on this video or you want to specifically see the process of getting blood work done, we put out a video on that, but I wanted to release the full video because at the end of it we get to go into a lot of lifestyle factors, training factors, and things that don't necessarily have to do with the blood work itself. And before we dive into it, make sure that if you're looking for more awesome ways to simplify the process of getting healthy and make it more lifestyle based, that you tap that subscribe button, you like this video, and leave a comment below. And most importantly, if you're looking for individual help, you go down below this video. We got a link there with a free training on what we do and how we do it, and then also an opportunity to book a call if you want to talk about how we can help you. But without further ado, let's get into it. What's up, man?
Not too much. How you been?
Great. It was awesome seeing that report. Pretty cool results.
Well, oh, your blood work?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So where do you want to start?
You're the expert, man.
All right. So, yeah, we're going to just kind of start right from the top, and, cortisol in the morning, you're pretty in the middle, right? So you probably have I would guess, a pretty decent like cortisol awakening response. You've been, from my knowledge, self-employed for quite some time. You don't really have a necessity to really wake up at a specific time, I'm going to assume.
I have typically 3. It was previously like 4 or 5 days a week. Now it's 3. I have a 7 a.m. call, so I am required to get up. I mean, technically like 6:50, but I get up around 6:30 latest.
Right. But you probably also go to bed at a decent time. Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
And you get daily sunlight in the morning. So most likely you have a pretty decent circadian rhythm. Waking up is probably relatively easy for you, right? Like you're not struggling to wake up. You don't need a caffeine IV to get out of bed in the morning. You have a pretty decent cortisol response.
Yeah, I'd say. I mean, there's some mornings where like if I'm up at 5:30 to hit the gym, I'm a little more tired and
Yeah.
I'm moving slowly, but it's not debilitating.
No, I mean, and that makes sense, right? Because your normal wake up time, I'm guessing, is probably like 6:30. You probably wake up pretty naturally around that time. So 5:30, that's a full hour earlier. Your body's like, yo, what are you doing?
Yeah. Yep.
All right. So moving right on down, DHEA, good place. That is going to be a precursor to your testosterone, your androgens, things along those lines. Again, kind of right in the middle and in a really good place. And as we get further down the lab work, we know that we're at a pretty happy right in the middle.
Cool. Are these, because I know we've had this conversation about like how they're giving low number, high number, that's average, right? Like that's not ideal.
So basically that's going to be right in the middle of your standard. So majority of labs are going to pull the average of like 10,000 people, right? So labs obviously do a lot of blood draws. So they're going to go off of the average of roughly 10,000 people, to my knowledge. And so that means, as we look at the general health and wellness of the population of America, generally, we're not looking at a very healthy population, right? So that is a game of averages against a rather unhealthy population. I am fortunate enough to, because of some of the programs that I'm involved in, we have access to like functional ranges. So what would be optimal? So if we go ahead and pull that up, as I pull that up for you, just give me 1 second. So your standard for a male, a functional range is going to be, so this range, as you can see, like on the actual blood panel, when we pull it up and look, our range is anywhere between, for someone who's greater than 19 years old, 31 to 701.
Yeah.
So if we're looking at optimal health and functional health ranges, we're looking at between 280 and 520. For how old are you again?
28.
28. So ages 20 to 29. We have a little bit of a different range as far as optimal for a man is going to be 280 to 640. So a little bit of a higher range, in you fall right within those parameters, even on a little bit leaning towards, higher end, which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
lower end, right? Because I'm at 373.
Oh, I apologize. I thought it was a little bit higher, but yeah, you're going to be, let me pull that one more time.
Is lower better, or like would it be better to be smack in the middle, closer to 280 or closer to 640?
Yeah. So generally when we're looking at those things, like that's where like functional health gets kind of fun. When you're looking at being an optimal person, right, is generally like, so without diving too deep into it, something that's really cool to look at and learn about is Dutch panels. So dried urine analysis panels. And so on a dried urine analysis panel, they have dials, right? And it's going to give you that functional and optimal range. And ideally, like the goal would be to hit right in the middle of those ranges, which what 280 to 640, 373, you're really not far off. You're basically what 50 points off from the middle between that range.
Yeah, so middle would be 460 flat. So like
Yeah.
90, 87.
Yep. So not bad.
Yeah.
All right. As we go further down the line, estradiol, 25.9 optimal range for men. You're looking at 10 to 50. Now, this is something that there is a lot of conflict in the industry about, is like, what is like optimal range for estrogen? Well, we know that we don't want estrogen to be completely tanked in a man, because estrogen is cardiac protective. So it protects your heart. It is responsible in a portion of how you're going to get a boner. So we do need estrogen, right, to complement your testosterone. And so, especially for males who are either on PEDs, or someone like yourself, as we get further down this panel, who has higher testosterone, having even a little bit higher estrogen value would not necessarily be a bad thing. It's not a, people demonize hormones and treat things in silos, and we can't treat things in silos. Everything has a responsibility. So your estrogen falls right in that range and is great.
Sweet.
Continuing right on down the line, LH and FSH, those are going to be, stimulating hormones. And what was the value there on the LH?
LH, I got 4.6.
6. Again, right in the middle of that range. And FSH?
FSH is 2, so that looks lower, but
Yep, a little bit on the lower side, but nothing of major concern.
what are those ranges for LH and FSH?
So follicle stimulating hormone. So in a woman, that's going to stimulate egg growth in the ovaries. In men, it controls the production of sperm. So this is going to be like an indicator of your sperm production. Luteinizing hormone in men signals the testes to make testosterone.
Cool. Yeah. And then just for the video, is it possible to get a copy of the ranges, or do you just want to say what the ranges are for each one? Because I know they're different.
Yeah, it's not my sheet to give. So I can give you that. 1 second. Let me just pull back. Of course, it brings me all the way back to the top of the page. Bear with me here. So let me pull functional ranges for LH in a healthy male is going to be 1.5 to 9.3. Okay. And that's MIU per milliliter. 1.6 to 8.0 MIU per milliliter for a male for FSH.
Okay. So a little bit on the lower end, which is, you said sperm production?
Yes, sir.
So I got a low risk for having a baby?
I guess. I wouldn't bank on it.
No, I'm not gonna bet there.
It's a all right, moving right along, my man. As we go, progesterone 0.4 for you. And for males, there it is going to be 1 to 1.2 is going to be optimal. So a little bit lower on that end from a functional standpoint. As we look at the lab work, we see that range, you actually fall on the high side of their range. Let me just double check the measurement, because sometimes that can be different based on lab. It is nanograms per milliliter. Go. Why does
like 0.1 to 0.12. And what is progesterone?
Yeah, so small amounts in a male is important for sexual function and cognitive function. That is progesterone, like as we look at a Dutch panel, is going to be part of precursors to your estrogen and a couple other markers as we like look at a Dutch panel and like we see, because like every hormone, so you have is like pregnenolone is the mother hormone, right? And then like if you're looking at a Dutch panel, it's super cool. It's like it breaks it down and you see like how it goes down to DHEA, and then DHEA sulfate moves into testosterone, then which moves into your androgens, and then your androgens go over to estrogens, and it's like all of a metabolism, like how they continue to, it's like a flow chart, how they continue to flow throughout the body. So progesterone, like you said here, 0.4, I'm going to be honest, I haven't dealt with like progesterone or low progesterone in a man. You're not alarming, like with such a small range, I wouldn't really be super alarmed about it, but it would be something I would have to look into as far as like, hey, how do we optimize that? And looking lower on your panel, as we look at like sex hormone binding globulin, it may just simply be like a stress thing, right? Like we know that stress can play a huge role in our lives and affect a lot of different things. So we definitely know that, like, you know, based on your SHBG, you know, there is probably a stress component factor for you. Because knowing you, I've known you for a while, and I know a lot of your practices as far as how you handle nutrition, how you handle daily sunlight, circadian rhythm regulation. Like you do a lot of the right things, but there is a certain amount of unavoidable stress, especially being a business owner. You know, we can do all the right things in the world, but there's still going to be small impacts for sure.
Gotcha.
All right, moving right along. Prostate in a good place. I don't believe I have the functional range for that. I will double check for you, but that is falling for you. Prostate. I don't have a marker for that, but falling in within range as far as the test goes. And then as we get down to sex hormone binding globulin, little bit higher again, like I said, when we look at sex hormone binding globulin, it is a little bit higher. What do we know about sex hormone binding globulin is that it is going to bind to 3 sex hormones, which actually makes a little bit more sense as far as the progesterone. As I was just doing my due diligence and double checking on progesterone, or sorry, SHGB, it's going to bind to 3 different sex hormones, and it is produced by the liver. So what can happen is that sex hormone binding globulin binds that up and basically waits until it needs to be released. When we do have situations where we have stress, that sex hormone binding globulin can bind up hormones, because you may, if like the unfortunate part of the human body is we never got an update like our iPhones did, right? Like they don't know any difference between you're missing a meeting because you woke up late, or you're stuck in traffic, or your AC is out in the middle of summer in Arizona. We never got that update, right? When we see stress levels like that, comparatively speaking to 500 years ago, where for the most part, like we led a much less stressful lifestyle, as far as, you know, daily practices. Stress was going to be coming from like our family members. It was going to be coming from maybe a drought, something along those lines, but we had far less stress. Whereas like daily, we can have multitudes of stress impacts that can impact us on a day-to-day basis, sometimes minute by minute. And so it doesn't necessarily, like, reproduction is not your body's highest priority when it's in a stressed out state. So it can bind up and hold on to those sex hormones, estrogen, testosterone, progesterone. And so that can bind up those things. It doesn't necessarily mean that they aren't available and your body isn't producing, and they're just being bound up, waiting to be released when we're in a little bit of a less stressful situation.
Gotcha.
Right. So as we look at your markers, you have a great total testosterone because you do a lot of those factors, as far as getting optimal sunlight. You're eating a highly nutrient dense diet. You care about your sleep. You're not overstimulating yourself with caffeine, to my awareness, etc. But then we do see, hey, there is obviously some stress factors in your life. we could be binding up some of those sex hormones like your testosterone. So we see high, according to the panel, testosterone, and then we see a little bit lower free testosterone, not like completely tanked by any means, but could be optimized. So in this situation, a lot of times what I recommend for clients with this, with a little bit higher SHGB is a really easy fix, and a natural mineral that can help out with this is going to be boron. I would say start with about 6 milligrams in the morning on a day-to-day basis, and this can help free up some of your testosterone, and you would notice some better, you probably will notice some simple things like some better and easier muscle building. You're going to notice that you probably have even a little bit higher libido, things along those lines with having more free testosterone available.
Cool. Any brand you recommend for that, or just standard?
So when I've recently applied it to client programs, I really love like Thorne and Nutridyne products. Unfortunately, they don't offer a lot of individual supplements or minerals. So Pure Encapsulations is a great company that does offer boron, and so that would be what I would recommend as far as 6 milligrams in the morning for that, and that covers your panel. So I do have a couple of questions for you as far as like I've watched your fitness journey and stuff like that, and I know when you've come and trained with me is like, to my awareness, do you follow like a very specific program? I know you get in a lot of workouts with friends because it's something that you definitely enjoy. But I noticed some recent feedback from watching your socials is that you have been running into, feeling like your body's getting pretty beat up, and you're having a lot of recovery days.
Yeah, that was so typically. So I'm at the gym 7 days a week in my normal routine. Now that's not going 100% every day. Like I have prehab days where it's more stretching, strengthening, knees over toes stuff. And typically I'm pretty good with recovery. Last week I was running into, like, I hate using the S word, sick. Like I was running into something and my body was fighting something off. And then I've also found when I do high intensity exercise, it takes a while for me to recover. So like I just started jujitsu 2 weeks ago, and I'm definitely feeling it. Like my body's a little bit more sore throughout the day.
So a couple things to take into consideration with something like jujitsu is it's a highly aerobic environment, right? You're going to be burning through carbohydrates, a lot of them. So especially with you, it's actually really funny is like looking at you as an athlete is in my year mentorship with Derek this past year, we've really been talking a lot about saturated fats. And I know you're messing around with carnivore right now, or I can't remember, meat and dairy or something. You're one of them.
7 days animal based, 7 days carnivore, just for a test.
Yeah. So with that being said, you already avoid seed oils, but just making sure that you're getting as much saturated fats as you can. So one of Derek's clients I know that they've been messing around with is, last year during his growth season, he got up to over 1,000 grams of carbohydrates a day. And then you start to run into like insulin sensitivity issues. You kind of go the opposite way. It stops being great. Like you stop getting great energy, and all of a sudden you start getting just like really like lethargic and bogged down because you're running into insulin issues. Whereas now with what Derek has been kind of hypothesizing and messing around with is saturated fats, and he's gotten up to like 220 grams of like saturated fats a day. He's the biggest he's ever been. He's the leanest he's ever been, and he's been performing better than he ever has. He's not having a lot of these management issues. So kind of a fine line. It's actually really funny. It's like while we were going through these lectures about 6 months ago, is my dad is trained in French cuisine. So my dad was a chef. He was trained in traditional French cuisine. And if you know anything about French cuisine is very, very calorically dense on both sides. It's very calorically dense in saturated fats. It's very heavily butter, cream, like heavy cream in all of their sauces. And then it's very carb heavy, right? So it's a combination of both. But if you look at French people and you look at their history, they're not obese. They don't have those issues. So they're both very well they're extremely metabolically flexible. They have a lot of flexibility with carbohydrates and fats. And but you look at their lifestyle, they probably walk an average of 15,000 steps a day, just given their culture, their society, and how they lived, everything like that. They're not dealing with those levels of obesity. And I personally hypothesize, I obviously haven't had a chance to test this, is majority of those people are probably eating, to us as Americans who are so calorically, concerned about gaining weight. I'd be willing to bet that the average woman there probably eats 2,500 calories.
Yeah.
The average man is eating 3,500 to 4,000, and they don't even think twice about it. Like, that's not something of concern to them because they are metabolically flexible and they can get away with it, right? Because you look at their culture as well, as like a lot of them, they're eating pastries like every day. And again, they don't have a lot of these like comorbidities and obesity and other things like that due to the quality of the nutrition that they're eating. So like with yourself, like struggling with recovery is like not being afraid of eating, saturated fats, right? Your butters, your raw dairy, stuff like that, is not being afraid of like, someone like yourself. Again, I could probably say you could easily get away with like 150 grams a day and really not be struggling with gaining weight, and kind of having like an even keel between carbohydrates and fats, and not trying to push all carbohydrates.
Yeah. Yeah, that's typically where I'm at. Like, I'm not scared of saturated fats in any way. I'm cooking everything grass-fed butter. Raw milk has been a little scattered in terms of how much I have it, but I have cheese almost every day. I'm having grass-fed beef, 2 big patties. I think they're like 300 plus calories each, like, and high fat content in them. Like, I'm definitely eating. I don't track my numbers, so I couldn't give you exact numbers, but I feel like I'm consuming enough of those types of things. Eggs too, pasture raised eggs I'm having every morning or most mornings.
So now, what is your primary like goals right now?
That's a good question, man. I want to get stronger, I want to get bigger, and I want to get faster and more athletic. So just optimize those areas.
Okay. So I know you fast.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, what does that look like? Like, are you more so like a weekly faster? Like, you fast like once per week? Are you fasting every day?
It's more intuitive for me. So a lot of it's based on my schedule. A lot of it's just how I'm feeling. Like, if I have an open hour in the morning, I'll eat whenever that open hour is. I am intentional. The one thing is a 24-hour fast once a week. And then during that fast, I always make sure like the last meal before it and then the meal when I break it is large. Like, I'm not under eating by any means. I'm actually intentionally, I wouldn't say overeating, but eating more before and after my fast. Because when I do my 24-hour fast, if I'm not intentional about it, I lose weight, and I just don't want to at this point. And I'm really happy with where my weight is. So yeah,
So you're not fasting every day. You're not following like a 16-8 plus like a 24-hour fast or anything like that.
heck no, no.
Oh, good. Awesome. I just didn't know. Obviously, I don't asking just simple questions like that. So yeah, man, I mean, the biggest thing for you, like gaining weight and stuff and like optimizing performance, is like, especially when you're going to jujitsu, is not being afraid of like consuming probably even extra carbohydrates. Like, I would highly recommend like some not from concentrate fruit juice, maybe even to sip on during your workouts, along with honey, is going to be huge for your performance, huge for you to not feeling super fatigued and lethargic following jujitsu. And then, being that you're adding in jujitsu, like, honestly, man, I would really take into consideration probably 3 to 4 training sessions, like weight training sessions per week, maxing out at 4. Like, I really would not recommend training more than that, especially adding in jujitsu and just like your daily activity level as a general whole, like your non-exercise activity. Or you're going to you can do more, but the sheer amount of food you're going to have to eat to perform like at those levels is going to be a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm prepared for that. I don't count my prehab days, which is like 2, sometimes 3 a week. I don't count those as workouts because I'm never pushing the weight. I'm never pushing even close to failure or strain. It's more just like weights that are going to open up certain body parts, make them more mobile. So like, I'm never going for strength PRs with prehab days. I'm never leaving the gym like sweating and super fatigued.
So one
It's
way you can look at that is I love using that model. A different way to approach it is generally like if I'm going to break down a workout, I'm going to put normally my A series is my meat and potatoes, right? Like your squat, your deadlift, your chest press, overhead press, chin ups, yada, yada. Okay. If I'm going to be doing prehab work, I just do it at the beginning of those workouts to open up those tissues. So, for example, like before my chest days right now, I do easy bar pullovers. And then I pair that with a thoracic extension exercise and basically prep my thoracic spine to not only be more mobile, but more strong and more in that extension, open up my chest, open up my lats, open up my teres by using those easy bar pullovers. That is my prehab. And then I go into my training session, and my B series is my meat and potatoes. Then it's like less time in the gym as well, giving you also more time freedom back. Because like I deal with this a lot in the female fitness space is like women think that they need to train 7 days a week. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with you doing prehab exercises, just from like being a business owner and also time considerations is looking at it as like, okay, well, how can I fit this in? What are the biggest prehab things I can do right before my training session to optimize that specific training session, and then move on and fill my time on other days and have like a break from the gym. I remember when, I was much younger, it was like, 23, 24, 25, like, dude, I fucking train as much as I could, like, because it's like, I loved the gym. I loved being there, but it was an unhealthy, like, quote unquote love for the gym. Like, and you will reach a point to like burnout and fatigue of even doing that. And it can be detrimental long term. So just kind of thinking of it a little bit of a different approach. Another thing that I really like to do is like a lot of like what I've seen you've been doing is, strength slash hypertrophy training. Yes, you have your prehab days, but one of the biggest things that what I've taken away from my time with working with Derek, both as his being my coach and my mentor, and something that I incorporate for my athletes that just crushes. And I think we've talked about this a little bit before, is generally I'm spending about 12 to 16 weeks in strength or hypertrophy. And then I will, depending on how my body's feeling, I will spend 1 to 2 weeks in basically incomplete rest. So using very, very short rest periods, you're talking between 20 to 40 seconds max in between exercises, but these are going to be accessory movements, right? So it's going to be like a machine chest press with a machine chest fly. It's going to be biceps. It's going to be leg extensions with a calf raise. It's going to be hamstrings with like a glute bridge. This is going to do a couple different things. It's going to deload your nervous system. It's a fun way to train because it's very pumpy, right? You get just gnarly pumps. And at the end of it, typically you will notice you drop a couple pounds of inflammation. You will notice better partitioning of nutrients to those tissues. So you actually look fuller and bigger. So when you come away from this phase, you lose a little bit of inflammation, and all of a sudden you have like nutrients and glycogen stores in all the right places. So your physique as a general whole looks just bomb after just a couple of weeks. And then from there, we can go into, you can kind of play with how you like to do it personally. I generally find that works for a couple of weeks. And then to prepare for my next phase of hypertrophy or strength is I will use what's called systemic training. So more so similar training style to what we just got done with, but on a global aspect. So improving global nutrient partitioning. It's basically cardio with weights. So you're using like a squat and a chin up. You're using a RDL with a bench press. And you're doing these again with a couple different things. Like you could look at it from a perspective of using like training for time and trying to get as many rounds as possible within that time frame. You could set up a certain sets and rep period and then simply decrease rest. So you're increasing density of training by pulling rest every time you see that workout. And what that generally does is like you then build your aerobic system, you're building all your internal systems, and you're just firing so much better. I then go into strength and hypertrophy blocks, and I set PR after PR after PR after PR for weeks and weeks and weeks on end, because my body's able to recover, because it's not constantly something. One of the most simple things that I've ever been taught is the we want to think about training stimuluses as code written in a computer. So ones and zeros. So if we look at something like Orange Theory Fitness, or we look at something like F45, or in our world of being bros, like hypertrophy training or strength training, it's all just a bunch of the same ones and zeros being inputted, and we're expecting a different result. If we start to incorporate managing that periodization where it's like, okay, well, we have strength and hypertrophy here for this amount of time, then we're going to move into these other phases to give our body different stimulus. It allows our body to be in a much better place to then perform the next time we bring back those ones and zeros for strength and hypertrophy. Like, I think in the first 11 months I was with Derek, I went from like a 275 RDL for like 8 to 455. So the numbers are just astronomical. And I noticed that I have far less issues with like really getting beat down and like recovery wise.
So those types of workouts, are you saying those are like for a week or two at a time? Or are you saying that specific time is kind of dripped throughout your normal training routine?
So you can kind of do it a couple different ways. So what I find with women actually have a propensity for, they can handle a lot more than men can. But they can also become overtrained very quickly as well. So what I like to do with women is generally I'll write like a 6-week block, and then I'm monitoring biofeedback heavily and seeing how they perform. And some can make it through a 6-week block, no problem. Some at weeks 3 and 4, they're getting very fatigued, they're getting very beat down, and they're not PRing anymore, right? They're not making great progressions anymore. So that's when I know, like for them specifically, I can use a like incomplete rest phase for like about a week. And then that generally gives them enough rest and they can go back to firing on all cylinders in a new block.
Okay.
Men tend to avoid aerobic conditioning. So that's where like the systemic portion comes in. So using like an incomplete rest block for 1 to 2 weeks, and then moving into a systemic training block where we're globally working on their aerobic system and internal systems to then optimize their training and strength and hypertrophy.
Gotcha.
So it would be like for you, it's like looking at your training. So like that is one thing, like men versus women, like men can generally make it through a 12 to 16 week block, no problem. But a lot of times because they aren't doing the aerobic work in the background, their recovery starts to, depending on the person, especially around week 12, they're no longer PRing. They're taking longer rest periods in between sets because they're huffing and puffing and sounding like Darth Vader. We know that those systems need to be improved. And that's when we can implement smart training and implement something like that that's going to impact them internally.
Very cool. Okay. Sweet.
Questions? Does that help plan out your training moving forward?
That's where my question is going to be. So in terms of where I'm at, if I'm still feeling a little bit longer recovery periods, you'd recommend to enter one of those blocks right now of 20 to 40-second rests, accessory work.
Yeah. So like, what are you like? I think we've written this out before, so I don't know if you've ever.
Yeah, I actually think the paper is right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of really, where are you at? As far as training, like how long have you been training strength and hypertrophy? Another thing, like honestly, man, I would highly recommend for yourself, is this going to be a really great learning tool. I love that you love going and working out with other people. Like that's phenomenal. Creating community around yourself is amazing. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it, but having a general program where you're following it for regularly for 6 to 8 weeks, I would highly recommend it. Picking similar movements so you can then progress in those movements better. If you're throwing in 1 to 2 workouts with friends, cool. That's not a problem at all. But then being able to, maybe you have a 2-week break where you're not working out with buddies. Like it just happens, right? Sometimes life gets busy. You can't meet up with buddies. Is then having something on pen and paper where you're like, oh, well, hey, here's my workout. I know exactly what I'm doing. I know what I'm progressing on week after week after week. So I can be getting stronger at these movements. I mean, I think we can correlate that back. Like, the benefits of doing that. Like, you did what last year? You did 30 days of chin ups. You did 30 days of kettlebell swings. Like, progressing day after day, or in this case, week after week with similar workouts. Like, it's very advantageous for progress long term.
Yeah, well, I definitely don't want you to think that like my every week is filled with working out with people and that I'm just kind of just like going in with no intention and just going through the motions. Like I do keep track of all my workouts. I have the weights written down, and when I go to the gym, I am focused on progressing. It's just more intuitive of like I don't sit down on Sunday and say, okay, Monday's going to be chest, Tuesday's going to be back, Wednesday's going to be legs. Like when I enter the gym, or even before the gym, it's typically the day before. I'm thinking, okay, these past few days, this is what I've trained. So optimally, in terms of what's the most recovered and what I want to work on, tomorrow I'm going to work on this.
Mm-hmm.
So there's definitely rhyme and reason. It's just a little bit more flexible than a standard like 6-week program. You have to hit this.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's how I like it. Like it's cool to get stronger in exercises, and I am, but I'd rather have flexibility and go in and like enjoy what I'm doing than have a very strict regimen of you have to do this.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Lifestyle, baby.
Yeah. Biggest thing with that too is just like remembering is like exercise. How do I want to say this? Or exercise order matters. From a perspective of like, generally your meat and potatoes is going to be those big compound movements, like your squat, like your RDL, your deadlift, your bench press, your overhead press, your chin ups. Like those are going to be things that I would highly recommend. That like one of the most simple things that I can see with people in optimizing their training is making sure to prioritize those movements first, not necessarily last in their workouts. And then accessory movements, that's when things can get really like you can have that variety and a lot more fun with it, as far as like, hey, I want to do astergrass Bulgarian split squats today as an accessory movement. Hey, I want to do leg press. Hey, I want to do bicep curls. Hey, I want to do lateral raises. Like those are all going to be those things that kind of fall in those accessory categories. And which there's always context and ways to break rules, like as far as like, hey, I need to train this before I train my squat, but it's going to be like sub-maximal because it's going to prepare me to have a better squat.
Yeah. Cool. So as far as like the blood work itself, boron is, I think that's the main takeaway for me, is getting that SHBG a little bit down.
Boron, super simple add-in for you. Mineral, other than that, man, you are in a really, really great place. And I think that would, basically, if we looked at blood work again in 90 days, 6 months, that you would be in a better place overall, and probably notice some better progesterone markers, better free testosterone markers. And you'll start to notice that as far as your ability to build tissue, as well, ability to build tissue, as well as your just other cognitive function, right? So testosterone is going to play factors in cognition, energy, libido, things along those lines. And what I've learned throughout the years is that everybody's different as far as like a physiological standpoint, like especially when you start dealing with like low testosterone. Some men think that, hey, low testosterone, it's like my boner's just going to go away, like guaranteed. Well, it's not. It can be massive factors of like you have no drive to do anything. Like you have literally no drive to do anything. You are very lazy. You don't want to do anything. For me personally, when I started dealing with low testosterone, as I've reflected back when my low testosterone was found, is I dealt with that for years. Very low energy, very little drive to do anything. Just didn't want to do much at all. It was always kind of like pulling teeth to try to get me to do stuff, because I just always felt very low energy. Whereas like my libido and ability to have an erection was fine. Like I never had an issue. It was always there. It was whatever. And it wasn't until all of a sudden that became an issue where it was like, I could take or leave sex. Like I really didn't care about it. There was some issue starting and I was like, what in the world is going on? And that was when those like alarm bells went off. But I think a lot of men don't really realize like how much low testosterone can affect all facets of your life, and signs and symptoms show up different in everybody, including like depression and anxiety can be highly, touted towards that. Like I remember when I was 25, I went on, like I ended up being put on like extended release Ritalin, and I started to notice that I was like in a very depressed state, and I was put on an antidepressant, and I was on it for literally 10 days, and I was like, absolutely not, this is not for me, this is horrible, this isn't helping my symptoms, because it wasn't. It was a band-aid over a bullet hole for a problem that it wasn't addressing at all.
Yeah. Yeah. With boron, so it's great that I have these numbers and I can even do like a check-in in a few months, get blood work done again. Is there a downside of taking boron? Let's say someone doesn't get blood work, right? Like, would there be any reason not to take boron?
Not to take boron. At the end of the day, it's a mineral. And we lack a lot of minerals. Our tap water is trash, right? So generally don't drink tap water. It's basically poison, right? But the problem is majority of the filtration systems that we do have, unless you spend obscene amounts of money. It's actually funny. I was thinking about it the other day. My grandparents have like an obscene filtration system that my grandfather put into his home, which is like a reverse osmosis household, like the whole house filtration system. But then he also put in a remineralization system as well to remineralize his water. So it's super cool. But it is obscene amounts of money. There really wouldn't be any major negative side effects because it's also going to support testosterone production. But it's one of those things of like, kind of test, don't guess, right? Don't just start taking random minerals because some influencers on the internet said, hey, this can help. Do your due diligence. Test, don't guess. Like taking something just for shits and giggles is probably not the greatest idea.
Yeah.
Like unless you're looking at like, if you're looking for general health supplements, looking at a high quality multivitamin and a high quality like multi-mineral, probably not a bad idea. So you can look at like multi-mineral products that are going to replenish those things that you might be losing in your water if you're using a reverse osmosis, or you can get, I have it here.
I use trace minerals right now.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Yeah, trace
Yeah,
minerals.
I think I have that exact one. Yeah, that's it. So I put that. So I have reverse osmosis. So I go out and refill 5-gallon jugs, and then in my water every morning I fill up my gallon and I put in about 80 drops of that stuff.
Yep. So yeah, just simply adding that to your water can cover most of your bases, right? Because at the end of the day, I think the thing that we need to mention here, Schuyler, is we as health coaches, what are we chasing? We're chasing optimal health. Like we want to be the highest functioning members of society.
100%.
Whereas a lot of people, like they just want to be able to bend over and tie their shoes without heavy breathing. They want to be able to have sex with their partner. They want to be able to move without pain. Like they aren't necessarily so obsessed with it that they're chasing, the highest function of humankind. It's like we have to be realistic with what a lot of people's goals are. And some of them, like they just want to look good, feel good, sleep well, but they aren't necessarily chasing the most optimal. Like, so when we look at something like that, it's like, okay, well, if you got a water filter in your house, add some trace minerals to your water, you're probably going to be in a pretty good place. And then a multivitamin, probably going to keep you pretty sweet. Eat a nutrient dense diet for the most part, 80-20 rule there, right? And wow, cool. Like we have a much better, healthier human. Now, if you're truly trying to reach past that, then that's kind of start to get is test, don't guess, find out what's going on, what might be out of whack. What are the lifestyle things and interventions that we can put into place to get you to where you want to be?
Yeah. Heck yeah. Well, sweet, man. Any other recommendations? Any other things you want to share? Anything that'd be helpful?
I mean, I just think, as far as this call goes, and everything is just, obviously a lot of the things that, you, Schuyler, do is impactful on your health, right? Is getting up in the morning, getting daily sunlight, going to bed on time. I think you don't even have a TV in your house, do you?
In my house, I do, not in my bedroom.
Oh, okay. You do have one in your house?
Yeah.
You not used to? Wasn't that you?
Nope,
No.
not me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Never mind. Is just like things like that, right? Is just making sure it's like getting up in the morning. Ideally, getting morning sunlight within the first 30 minutes of waking up is it's such a small and yet easy habit. Getting 10,000 steps in a day, right? And just having that non-exercise activity can play, I'm personally right now, coming on, I think I'm like 7 days out from the halfway point of 75 hard. And, I'm not doing this for fat loss. This is 100% realizing that like food has controlled me almost my entire life because of like how I grew up and how my family coped with anything, coped with happiness, eat more food, coped with sadness, depression, anxiety, anger, whatever, eat more food. Like there is always a reason to eat more food. And it's been an interesting journey, like realizing like I can't have a cheat meal. So like, the realization of like how easy it used to be to just walk into a gas station and grab a candy bar, to get my morning coffee and have a cookie or a pastry or whatever, and not even think twice about it, that, oh man, I've had a candy bar and a pastry today, or I've had a pastry or a candy bar every single day for the last 7 days and not even realized it. Like I eat all my other good quality nutrient dense foods, but I'm like literally eating that every day. And when I am eating, especially like when I'm at maintenance calories or in a surplus of calories to put on muscle tissue, and I'm eating all these calories of quality nutrient dense foods, but then all of a sudden I'm throwing on a 400 or 500 calorie pastry, cookie, or candy bar on top of that. Well, that can play a huge difference in, caloric consumption, and those like realizations throughout that process. But I've lost like 7 pounds in like 21 days.
Let's go. 70, did you say?
Seven.
I swore you just said 70, dude. I was like, that's not possible. 7. Amazing, man.
If I lost 70 pounds, dude, I'd be skin and bones. And
you'd be my level. Little twig.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not doing it. And I mean, I would say, I think now like my average for the month is roughly 12,500 steps. And I really haven't done a whole lot of cardio outside of that. Like at the end of the day, I am coinciding this with a cut intentionally, for the mental discipline. And so my coach and myself definitely have some big goals as far as like what we're trying to accomplish. So we're adding in some more cardio for sure. But like my average steps now are at 12,500. Over the course of the weekends, I'm getting roughly 15 to 16,000 because I basically break up my workouts into two walks, some of them being hikes and stuff like that. And just from that is what I'm noticing. Hey, I'm dropping weight, right? Just from incorporating getting in daily steps. Now, if we throw on top of their intentional conditioning training for the heart, right? What can we get out of that? As my body gets more efficient at burning through fuel, because we don't want to necessarily look at cardio as a caloric funnel. Like that's a really shitty way to look at cardio, is how many calories can I burn? Because you can ruin one cardio session with one candy bar in a heartbeat, right? So we want to look at it as how much more optimal can I make my body? And so now as we add that in, now what can we really see? Like, can we see in 75 days, can I lose on, someone like myself, I started at 245 pounds and I have a pretty decent amount of tissue on me. Can we see 21 pounds of loss? And then how big of a difference does that make in my life? And then coming out of that other side with like that mental discipline aspect as well.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. For people who want to find your stuff, maybe want to connect with you if they're interested in blood work or anything like that, what's the best steps for them?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me. My personal page is GQ Fitness with an extra S, on Instagram. You can find us at intentional-strength.com. Or you can find our business page is Intentional Strength Training, on Instagram. Those are all going to be avenues you can find us. And super cool.
Dang, man. Never realized you had that extra S in there.
Mm.
Well, sweet. Appreciate it, bro.
Appreciate you, man.
Yeah, this is good. I definitely, I'm obviously going to be doing the boron, and I already ordered it. But it would be cool in maybe like 3 more months or something to get this done again and just see how things have changed. If that free test has gone up, if SHBG has
Yep.
gone down. But yeah, I think that'd be cool to do a follow-up at some point too.
100%.
Yeah.
Awesome, man.
Oh, man. Well, cool. Everything good on your end? All right, guys, that's all we got for today. If you're looking to connect with Garrett and get blood work done with him and get a consultation with him, you can find all his information in this video. Mention that you came from me and he'll give you a cool discount. And then again, if you are looking for more awesome ways to simplify the process of getting healthy, not having to do torturous workouts, not having to count calories, not having to go on any sucky diets, make sure you check the link in the description as well to learn about what we do and how we can help you. But with that being said, I've got awesome videos coming out, so subscribe to the channel. And of course, as always, make sure to eat smart, move more, sleep deep, and be grateful for this moment. I'll see you in the next video.